Hello there, my name is Jean Weeb and I want to talk to you about fish. Water covers about 75% of our Earth's surface. Here's my little globe. See how much water there is on that? There are over 25,000 different kinds of fish that we know of in the water of the earth. What is a fish? That's a good question. Turn around to your neighbor and tell your neighbor what makes a fish. All right. Did anybody say that it's a cold-blooded animal, that its body temperature matches that of the surrounding water that it's swimming in? Did anybody say that a fish breathes by passing water through its mouth and then through its gills, which take the oxygen out of the water and then push the water on out? Did anybody say that it has a swim bladder that holds air to help it stay balanced and to help it float? Did you know that it has a slimy substance that moisturizes the scales that cover its skin, and that also protects those scales from infection, and it helps the fish slip right through the water? If you've ever touched a freshly caught fish, you've felt that mucus. Yuck. But it's important. Did anybody say that fish have fins that help them move forward and steer and keep their balance in the water? Did you know that fish have sense organs along their sides that help them to sense objects even if they're in muddy water? And it also helps them keep perfect formation in a school. Did you know that by traveling in schools, fish not only can fend off predators by being in a large group, but little fish can defend their territories, and because they're spread out more when they're in a school, it's easier to find food and then alert everybody else in the whole big group. Fish are very special, and they live all over the world, even under the ice of the north and south parts of the earth. Here is an article in one of John Clayton's bulletins from a long time ago that talks about how they swim, and his article is called Fish the Whip Crackers. Have you ever been at the end of a line of people who are all holding hands and running, and the person on the end gets whipped around? That's what it's referring to, because fish have such strong swimming mechanisms. Fish swim primarily by producing waves which travel the whole length of their body. The back and forth movement of the caudal fin is coordinated with smooth body movement. They're very graceful, aren't they? The flexible frame of the fish is a good foundation for the muscles. The backbone extends right from the head to the tail and is made up of many interlocking vertebrae, all interlocked together. The vertebrae are jointed to allow that side-to-side movement and are strong enough to withstand the great strain placed on them by those flexing muscles. Fish are very special. Here I have my own pet stingray. Here I have a National Geographic that shows a diver swimming with stingrays. Divers can go right up to them and pet them and swim with them. They're very curious. They want to know what the divers are doing, and look at this guy. This diver is feeding a ray. This is National Geographic again. Love National Geographic. This is a little fish called a wrasse. That starts with a W. And a wrasse is a cleaner fish. The wrasse sets up his own little doctoring station, and other fish come there. Even big fish like barracuda will come up to a little wrasse's station, and they'll be still, they'll open their mouths, they'll open their gills, they'll lift their fins, and then just stop and wait. The little wrasse eats parasites and infected flesh bits that help these bigger fish. And the bigger fish know, there's the wrasse, the bigger fish know that they're helping them, and they don't eat the wrasse. This is a very special situation that happens. The wrasse gets its food, and the bigger fish get their doctoring done, get their cleaning done. And here's a picture of another cleaner shrimp. They do the same job. Very important to the bigger fish. Here's a funny guy, the walking catfish. Can you see these fish in these pictures? This catfish has come out of the water and is using his fins as though they were feet, and is going across a road to get back into the water. He has enough air capacity to last until he gets across the road. He's not breathing through lungs, but he's holding air while he moves across. Here's another fish that gets out of the water. This is National Geographic, and the article is called, "Who Says Fish Can't Climb Trees?" These fish get up here to get their insect food, and they're using their little flippers like hands to cling to a little branch. They don't go very high, but they do climb to get their food. Here is a really interesting fish. This is also out of Geographic. The four-eyed fish sees all. He has bifocals. This fish has eyes that on the bottom half can see underwater, and on the top half can see in the air. Because these little fish swim to get their food right at the surface, their eyes stay right at the waterline. So, with the bottom half of their eyes, they can see in the water and see if there's food down there. And with the top half of their eyes, they're seeing in the air to see if there's food up there. Very, very interesting. Here's another one that I really like. Flashlight fish of the Red Sea. This is a picture of a dark area of shore and the seashore edge, and here are little glowing spots of light that turn out to be fish. Fish that have a little sac underneath their eyes, and in those sacs are some tiny little bacteria that have the ability to glow. So these are parasitic. The little parasitic bacteria that live in that sac help the fish to get its food, because when other fish see them in the water, the other fish come toward the light. And because the little bacteria are parasitic, they get their food by living in this pouch under the fish's eye. So this is a symbiotic relationship of these flashlight fish and these bacteria. This is something that we can explain only by knowing that it was a perfect design, that these two living things live together and help each other because they were made that way, made to be perfect, made to get their food and have everything that they need. You know that whales are not fish, but they do live in the ocean and they do eat fish in the ocean. One of the things in recent years that divers have discovered is that whales will swim in a tight circle, around and around and around and around, hard and fast, with little fish in the middle. And they're frothing around, swimming so fast, makes bubbles that form a net around a bunch of fish that they want to have for their lunch. And so when these things swim around quickly and form this bubble net, the bubbles rise and envelop the smaller fish that are confused then. So these humpback whales are swimming around in a circle, and when they have made their bubble net big enough to envelop all the littler fish, then they zoom up in the middle of it and have their lunch. How perfect. I wonder who thought that up. Don't believe the whales did. You've seen pictures of sharks. You've probably seen television programs that show different kinds of sharks. Here is a book called Sharks. It's an Eyes on Nature book, and it has some really interesting pictures in it. Here's a man's hand, and that's a tiny little pygmy shark. Here's a man's hand, and that is a shark's tooth. Sharks don't have the air bladder that a lot of other fish have, but they do have a very large liver, which is full of oil. Oil is lighter than water, and so that does the same job as an air bladder in other fish. And so it helps them to balance. It helps them to float when they're not swimming forward. They don't have bones like other fish. They have cartilage instead. They have ferocious teeth, and they're carnivorous, and they're garbage eaters. Sharks eat things that have already died, and so they help clean up the ocean. So there are a lot of different kinds of sharks. Here's a great white shark. Here's a hammerhead shark. Sharks are very perfect for the way they live. So sharks are a very important part of the ocean life. When we see that there are so many perfect things in the oceans, when we can see that every single one of them has body parts, has hunting techniques, has schooling techniques, have all of these special things about them, when we can tell that something is perfect and complex, then we know that intelligence designed those living things. We need to remember who that intelligence is. God created all things so that they work together, so that they cooperate, depend on each other. We need to remember that God did this on purpose. This was no accident. It could not possibly have happened by accident. We need to remember that God made it all perfect. See what you can find out about your favorite kinds of fish, or some fish maybe that you never have heard of before. See what you can learn and share with your friends about things that live in the water. And remember that all of this is because of God.